Before I tell you my story, I want to ask you something. What would you do if one day you found out that your family, the people you trusted most, had been lying to you for years? That every sacrifice you made, every moment you thought they couldn't help, was actually built on a deliberate choice to betray you? This is not just about money. It's about betrayal, lies, and the kind of truth that shatters everything you thought was real. Make sure you stay until the end, because what I'm about to share will leave you questioning how far family loyalty should go. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 21 years old, and I study mechanical engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder. It was a Sunday evening, and the entire family had gathered for dinner at my parents' house in Denver, Colorado. The table was set with my mom's best china. A roast chicken steaming in the center, mashed potatoes and green beans on the sides. The warm smell of baked bread filled the room. But beneath the cozy surface, there was a quiet tension, one I had grown used to over the years. My family dinners were rarely warm or comforting. They were performances, with each of us playing our roles. My mom, Elizabeth, was the hostess, always smiling too widely, her eyes scanning the room to make sure no one said the wrong thing. My dad, Robert, sat at the head of the table, sipping red wine, trying to look like the responsible father. My older brother Derek leaned back in his chair like a prince on his throne, casual confidence radiating off him. And then there was my grandfather, Henry Millerati, 3 years old, still sharp as a blade, a man who had built his construction company from scratch and never tolerated dishonesty. When Grandpa was around, nobody dared to pretend for long. Halfway through the meal, Grandpa set down his fork, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and looked straight at me. "Ethan," he said, his voice steady but piercing, "are the $1,500 I send you each month enough to cover your college expenses?" The words cut through the air like shattered glass. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I blinked, my hand slipping. My fork clattered against my plate, the metallic sound echoing in the tense silence. My mother froze mid-bite, her fork suspended in the air. My father's wine glass tilted dangerously before he set it down with a thud. Derek glanced at me, his expression flickering between alarm and guilt. "What? What money?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Grandpa frowned, lines deepening on his weathered face. At first there was confusion, then realization, and then anger. "The money," he repeated. "The $1,500 I've been transferring every month into your student account. For nearly 2 years now. That's almost $36,000. Ethan." I felt my stomach drop. My vision blurred for a moment as though the walls around me were tilting. $36,000. I had never seen a single cent. In a rush, memories came flooding back to years of exhaustion, of scraping by, of nights I fell asleep at my desk with my stomach empty, the 4:30 a.m. alarm, to get to the construction warehouse by 5 o'clock, the 4 hours hauling bags of cement heavier than I was, the mad dash to make my 9 a.m. classes, sweat still clinging to my shirt, the evening shift at the Mexican restaurant, refilling salsa bowls and carrying trays until after midnight, the weeks I stretched a pack of ramen into 3 meals, the shame of fainting in class because I hadn't eaten, the humiliation of telling my professors I was fine when I clearly wasn't. And now, here was my grandfather, telling me there had been money, plenty of money all along. Grandpa's voice hardened. "Ethan hasn't received a dime." The silence at the table was deafening. My father's face drained of color. My mother twisted her necklace between trembling fingers. Nobody looked at me. Finally, my dad stammered, "Dad, it's complicated. Maybe we should talk about this privately." "No," Grandpa snapped, slamming his hand on the table. The plates rattled, the wine glasses clinked dangerously. His voice rose, cold and commanding. "You will tell me right now where my grandson's money is." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Derek, my older brother, cleared his throat. His voice was low, tight, almost ashamed. "They used it to pay off my poker debts." The room froze. Poker debts. The words hung in the air like poison. I felt my breath catch in my throat. The walls seemed to close in, the floor unsteady beneath me. Poker debts. While I had been breaking my back, starving, sacrificing every ounce of my youth just to survive, my parents had been funneling the money meant for me into Derek's gambling. Grandpa rose slowly from his chair. At 83, he still carried himself like a man used to, commanding respect. His voice was steel. $36,000. In 2 years, that money was for Ethan, for his future, not for Derek's addiction. Mom's voice cracked as she tried to explain, tears welling in her eyes. "Dad, please, you don't understand. Derek was in trouble, real trouble. Dangerous people were threatening him. We had no choice, no choice." Grandpa's voice thundered. "You had a choice, and you chose to lie. You chose to let Ethan suffer while Derek squandered everything." I turned to Derek, 3 years older than me, always the golden boy, the same brother who had been handed a brand new Mustang on his 16th birthday, while I got a used bicycle. The same brother who never worked a day in his life because he was too busy with his studies. The same brother who always had our parents' attention, their praise, their excuses. And now, the truth. Not only had they protected him, they had stolen from me to do it. How long? I asked, my voice shaking but firm. How long have you known about his addiction? The silence that followed was answer enough. I looked at each of them, my parents, who couldn't even meet my eyes, and my brother, who had the decency to look ashamed at that moment. Something inside me shifted. For 2 years, I had believed I was simply unlucky, that life was unfair, that maybe my family just didn't have the means to help. But now I knew the truth. They had the means. They just didn't care. Not about me, only about him. Grandpa's fury filled the room, but my father finally tried to defend himself. Dad, please, listen, he said, his voice trembling. We didn't want to tell you because it wasn't supposed to be like this. We thought Derek would stop after one scare. We thought it was just a phase. We were trying to protect the family. Protect the family, Grandpa barked, his eyes blazing. You call this protection? You call letting one son starve while the other gambles away thousands of dollars? Protection? My mother clutched at the tablecloth as if it could anchor. Her Ethan is strong, she whispered. He can handle things on his own. Derek, he isn't built the same way. He needed us. He was fragile. Fragile. The word echoed in my mind. I thought of my own body, thinned to 128 pounds, when I should have been at least 155. My ribs visible through my shirts, the bags under my eyes from working 2 jobs and sleeping 3 hours a night. Fragile. Was the one who had collapsed in a chemistry exam because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. And while I was swallowing pride in cheap instant noodles, Derek was in Vegas celebrating a lucky streak. Memories of our childhood crashed into me. At age 10, when Derek wanted the newest Xbox, Dad had bought it without hesitation. I asked for a used guitar, and the answer had been, too expensive. At 14, Derek wrecked his first car. Instead of punishment, he got a new one. I had to ride the bus until graduation. At 18, Derek's college fund was secure, untouched. Mine was tight, they said, so I should apply for scholarships. And now I discovered they had stolen my future entirely. I slammed my hand against the table, my voice breaking out louder than I ever imagined it could. Do you remember last October? I shouted, staring at my father. I called you crying, begging for help because I couldn't pay my dorm rent. Do you remember what you said? My father's lips tightened, but he didn't answer. You told me, real men figure it out. Get another job. I turned to my mother, my chest burning. And you, Mom? Last December, when my shoe broke and I was walking through snow with wet socks, do you remember what you said when I asked for help? Her face crumpled. Ethan, please, you told me I was being dramatic, that I needed to manage my money better. My voice cracked, but I kept going. And all this time you were getting $1,500 every month from Grandpa. Money meant for me. Money that could have saved me from humiliation, from hunger, from exhaustion. And you gave it to him. I pointed at Derek, who looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. I didn't ask for it, Derek said, his voice shaking. I never wanted you to suffer, Ethan. I shut up. I roared. You didn't stop them either. You let them feed your addiction while I broke my back just to stay alive. Derek's hands trembled as he ran them through his dark hair. His eyes glistened. I can't do this anymore, he muttered. I can't keep lying. Then tell him everything, Grandpa growled. And Derek did. He admitted that it wasn't only the $1,500 monthly transfers. Grandpa had also sent $8,000 each semester for tuition, supposedly for me, but I only ever received partial scholarships, never full coverage. That meant $24,000 more, when Grandpa did the math out loud. The sound of it was like a hammer hitting my skull. $60,000. In 2 years, all of it gone. All of it stolen. My father buried his face in his hands. My mother sobbed openly. Grandpa's voice dropped, cold as ice. Robert, Elizabeth, you've not only stolen money, you've stolen your son's future. I couldn't stay another second in that house. I stood so quickly, my chair screeched against the hardwood floor. My chest heaved with anger and betrayal. I can't do this, I said, my voice trembling. I can't sit here and pretend this is a family. Ethan, wait, Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. You had 2 years to tell me the truth. 2 years. Instead, you watched me starve, work myself into the ground, cry alone in my dorm, and you never thought I deserved to know. I grabbed my jacket and stormed toward the door. Son, Dad began. I spun on him one last time. Don't call me that. You gave up the right to be my parents the day you chose Derek over me. Then I slammed the door and walked into the cold October night. The air outside was crisp, the kind that burned your lungs but made you feel awake. I walked aimlessly through the quiet suburban streets where I'd grown up. Houses with glowing windows, families eating dinner, kids laughing in yards. All so normal. And me. I felt like the ground beneath me had been ripped away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Derek. Ethan, please, call me. I need to explain everything. Delete. Then. From Mom, honey, come home. We can talk this out. We love you. Delete. Then from Dad. You need to understand we did what we thought was best for the family. Delete. 7 messages in 15 minutes. Now they wanted to talk. Now when the truth was already out. Where was this urgency when I was starving? When I was begging for help? I kept walking. Past the elementary school where Derek had been chosen first for every team while I was always picked last. Past the park where he got the new baseball glove and I got his hand-me-down. Past the corner store where I'd worked my first job at 16, saving every dollar while Derek blew his allowance on parties. The memories were relentless. They weren't just lies about money. They were lies about love, about who mattered in this family and who did and single quotes t. By the time I reached the old park, I couldn't walk anymore. I sank onto a bench, burying my face in my hands. The question hammered in my mind, over and over. If they lied about this, what else had they lied about? I pulled out my phone and dialed the only person I could trust, my roommate, Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Yo, Ethan, where are you, man? You sound off. Marcus, I said, my voice breaking. Can you come pick me up? I'm at the old Elm Street playground in Colorado Springs. What the hell are you doing there? Weren't you at family dinner? It's a long story. Just please, come get me. On my way, he said, without hesitation. Marcus pulled up 40 minutes later, in his beat-up Honda Civic, music thumping faintly from the speakers. He took one look at me and shut it off. Jesus, dude, he said. You look like you've seen a ghost. I climbed in, and as he drove back toward campus, I told him everything. The money, the lies, Derek's confession, my parents' betrayal. Marcus's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Let me get this straight, he said slowly. Your grandfather sent 60 grand meant for you. Your parents stole it, gave it to Derek for his gambling, and you only found out because your grandfather asked you about it at dinner? Pretty much, I muttered. Marcus shook his head. That's not just wrong, Ethan. That's a crime. Literally a crime. When we got back to the dorm, I sat on my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. For 2 hours, I replayed everything in my head, the betrayal, the lies, the shame. At first I felt only rage, then despair, then something else. Resolved. I couldn't undo the past. I couldn't get back the years of exhaustion, hunger, humiliation, but I could make sure they paid for every moment of it. I whispered it aloud. In the darkness of my dorm room, like a vow, they're going to pay. By Monday morning, the fog had lifted. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a witness building a case. I started a folder on my laptop labeled Timeline, and another called Evidence. Every message my parents sent, every call log, every bank notification from Grandpa I screen captured and saved. I wrote out a day-by-day account of the last 2 years, the double shifts, the fainting spell during Orgo, the nights I slept on the floor because I couldn't afford a mattress deposit. 2 days later, at exactly 2:30 p.m., Grandpa pulled into the campus lot in his black Ford F, engine idling like a breath held too long. He waved me in. We drove south on I-25, the front range, a blue-gray wall to our right. He didn't speak for the first 15 minutes, hands steady at 10 and 2, jaw set. I'd seen that look before when I was a kid, and a contractor tried to stiff him. On a job, it was the look of a man who had decided there would be consequences. We turned off the highway toward a chrome and neon diner that looked frozen in 1978. A bell jingled when we walked in. The air smelled like coffee and fried onions. Grandpa chose the far corner booth where nobody could sit behind us. He ordered 2 coffees without looking at the menu. Only when the mugs landed on the table did he slide a thick manila folder. My way, Ethan, he said, voice low. What I'm about to show you is going to hurt, but the truth always costs less in the long run than a lie. I opened the folder. Neat stacks, bank statements, wire confirmations, handwritten notes from his CPA with dates circled in red. The $36,000 you learned about Sunday, Grandpa continued, tapping a page with a calloused finger. That's just the money explicitly labeled for your education. $1,500 a month for 24 months. But after you left the house, I had my accountant pull 5 years of transfers to your parents. All of them. He handed me a sheet with a simple table he'd drawn by hand. December 2019, $7,000 medical emergency Derek. March 2020, $6,500. Urgent home repairs, August Jan May 2020-2021, $8,000 each. Tuition gap for Ethan 3 entries. Sep 2021, $10,000 car repairs for Derek. February 2022, $12,000 additional university fees June 2023, $25,000 early graduation expenses Derek, and more, he said, flipping to a last page with a neat total. A little over $140,000 in 5 years, not counting cash withdrawals your parents made the same weeks the transfers posted. The numbers swam. I pressed my palms to the Formica tabletop to steady myself. Early graduation expenses. I had repeated Derek, never graduated early. Grandpa's mouth twitched into something that wasn't a smile. I called the registrar where he claimed to be finishing. He's 2 full years short. No cap, no gown, just stories. I stared at the ledger until the lines blurred. It wasn't just theft. It was architecturalized, arranged like scaffolding, each plank there to hold up the next. There's more, Grandpa said, and the way he said it made my skin prickle. He pulled a second folder. I reached out to some old contacts. Your father's subcontracting business? It hasn't had a real commercial job in nearly 2 years. The LLC is kept alive to collect my transfers. They've been living off my money, and the moment I stop, the whole facade collapses. I looked up. So what now? Do we call the police? Hire a lawyer. Grandpa took a slow sip of coffee. I already hired one. 2. Absolutely a litigator and a trust attorney. The litigator says we could allege fraud and conversion, but because I transferred funds to your parents, not directly to you, it becomes a mud fight. We can still fight it, but it will burn time and money. The trust attorney, though, has very clean tools. He leaned in, eyes bright with a kind of cold purpose. First, I cut off every penny to your parents today. Second, I notify the extended family exactly why. No more shadow stories. Third, I move assets, properties, savings, brokerage into a revocable trust with you as primary beneficiary and spendthrift provisions. They won't inherit a nickel. I opened my mouth, but he wasn't finished. Fourth, he said, softer. Now, I create a dedicated education fund under the trust and immediately transferred $200,000 into it. Not charity restitution. You will stop working. You will sleep. You will eat. And you will graduate on time with your head held high. Grandpa, I can't take you can, he said, voice suddenly steel again. And you will. I gave over 200 grand to people who lied to my face. I will give at least that much to the one person in this mess who told the truth by living it. The waitress appeared with a plate of apple pie on the house. Grandpa nodded his thanks, then passed me a small legal pad and a pen. Now you do something for me. You start writing, not fancy, just facts. I want an impact record. Dates, grades, meals you skipped, hours you worked, fainting, doctor visits you avoided because of money. Every time you asked for help and were told to figure it out. We'll give it to the lawyer and to anyone in the family who tries to rewrite history. So I wrote. At first the words came out slow, like clearing a clogged pipe. Then they poured. October 12th, called Dad. Real men figure it out. December 7th, shoe split, socks soaked. Mom, you're being dramatic. Beber, lab quiz after double shift. Slept in restroom stall. March, collapsed during exam. Numbers, dates, the hidden ledger of a life lived between clock-ins. When I finally looked up, Grandpa was reading, jaw tight, eyes glassed with a fury that wasn't hot anymore. It was clinical, surgical. We'll give this to attorney Rachel Harper, he said. She's our litigator. Even if we don't file a complaint, a demand letter from her with this attachment will shut down any pretense. Your parents have that. This was a misunderstanding. Will we sue? I asked. We'll keep that sword hanging, he replied. Often a blade above the head does better work than one in the ribs. He slid an engraved business card across the table. Harper and Lynn, LLP, civil litigation. On the back, a handwritten appointment Thursday, 11 a.m. Go with me tomorrow, he said. We'll discuss options. Meanwhile, I want you to meet someone else. He pulled a second card. Dr. Javier Martinez, Ph.D., counseling psychology. You don't walk out of a 2-year famine without scars. Let him help you stitch the ones you can't see. I turned the card over in my fingers, feeling equal parts grateful and ashamed that I needed it. You don't have to be broken to need repair, Grandpa said, reading my face. You just have to be human. The next morning, the law firm lobby smelled faintly of leather and eucalyptus. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out on downtown Denver. A bronze scale of justice sat on the reception desk like a warning. Rachel, Harper, early 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, shook our hands and ushered us into a conference room where a paralegal had already made copies of my timeline and Grandpa's statements. Rachel listened, interrupting only to clarify dates. When we finished, she laced her fingers and summarized like a closing argument. Here's what you have. A long pattern of misrepresentation, reliance, and detriment. The funds were transferred to Ethan's parents for the stated purpose of Ethan's education and living expenses. Instead, they diverted those funds to Derek's gambling debts and other non-Ethan uses. That's fraudulent inducement and conversion, potentially unjust enrichment. Challenges: the transfers were made to the parents, not to Ethan. Courts get squeamish about intra-family suits, but we have paper. Paper is persuasive. She slid a draft across the table, notice of demand and preservation of evidence. It demanded a full accounting within 14 days, preservation of devices and statements, and repayment proposals under threat of civil action. I doubt they'll pay, Rachel said, but they'll stop pretending. And if they smear Ethan to save face, I'll file. We won't start at DEFCON 1, but we'll let them know we own the ladder. Grandpa nodded. Send it. Rachel turned to me. 2 pieces of advice. First, no unsupervised conversations with your parents. Text or email only. Save everything. Second, don't let this devour your future. Take the money your grandfather's offering and buy back the years they stole. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. I will. That afternoon, I met with Student Financial Services in Boulder. A counselor named Ms. Patel reviewed my file with the calm competence of someone used to academic emergencies. She helped me submit a hardship petition, restructured my remaining tuition so the trust could pay directly, fast-tracked a housing extension, and connected me with the campus food pantry, not because I needed it now, but because she wanted me to see it. To understand that help existed even when people failed you. When I told her my GPA had slid to a 2.8, she pulled up my grades and pointed to an upward trend the last few weeks. That's not a scholar who can't. That's a worker who hasn't been allowed to. I left her office lighter than I'd arrived. For the first time, the future felt like ground, not ice. Cutting my parents off didn't make them quiet. It made them loud. The texts came in Florisanger, then guilt, then bargaining. Mom, we were protecting your brother. You're stronger, Ethan. You always have been. Dad, you're being manipulated by your grandfather. He's always preferred you. He's turning you against us. Mom, if you keep this up, Derek will end up on the street. Is that what you want on your conscience? Dad, return Grandpa's keys. You don't deserve the house. I saved every message, forwarded copies to Rachel, and didn't reply. When the phone rang, I let it go to voicemail. When they showed up outside my dorm one evening, Marcus texted campus security while I sat on the floor behind my locked door and listened to the knock. Knock, knock that used to mean dinner was ready and now meant guilt had arrived. Grandpa called. That night, they came to my place, too, he said lightly, as if commenting on the weather. I told them we could speak with council present. They declined. Imagine that. Will it get worse? I asked. Most storms shout before they rain. He said, let them shout. A week later, Derek's letter arrived, handwritten, pages. Smudged, I didn't read it then. I logged it, date received, envelope saved on, set it in the evidence box. I wasn't ready to parse which sentences were apology and which were rehearsal for more extraction. There would be a time for that. Not now. Instead, I kept building the life their choices had delayed. I met Dr. Martinez on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. First appointment I hadn't needed to squeeze between shifts. We talked about hunger, memory, about how the body keeps a ledger even when the mind forgives. He taught me to eat without counting what I owed to anyone for each bite. I started sleeping. Whole nights, I lifted weights. I studied in the library instead of a dishroom break room. I answered questions in class and heard my voice steady in my own ears, and quietly, methodically, Grandpa and the attorneys moved their chess pieces. The demand letter went out by certified mail. The trust was executed. Titles retitled, accounts retitled. The assets my parents had fantasized about inheriting flowed past them like a river diverted, filling irrigations that would actually grow. Something. On a gray Saturday morning, Grandpa called. Time, he said. One word. I've scheduled a meeting at your parents' house today at 3. I don't want to fight. I want a record. A record. Rachel will be there. So will a notary. We'll present the trust documents, the termination of support, and the demand for accounting. We'll give them a 30-day move out on the house title. You'll say your piece once clearly, kindly, permanently, then we'll leave. I swallowed. And if they beg, we listen, he said. Then we conclude. Mercy isn't the same as amnesia. I looked at my reflection in the dorm, mirror healthier already, though the eyes still carried winter. I straightened my shoulders and buttoned a clean shirt that actually fit. Marcus slapped my back at the door. Bring the folder, he said. Bring the new you, too. I picked up the manila file labeled truth. For the first time, the word didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a key. I stepped into the hallway and walked toward the elevator, toward the truck waiting outside, toward a living room where the past would be read into the record, and the future would stop asking permission to begin. At 3 o'clock, sharp Grandpa's F-150 pulled up in front of my parents' suburban house. I sat in the passenger seat, the folder labeled truth resting on my lap like both shield and sword. My stomach churned, but my mind was steady. Inside, the living room looked different than I remembered. The curtains were drawn, the carpet worn, thinner, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for too long. My mother perched on the couch, her hands clenched around a tissue. My father stood near the fireplace, stiff, defensive. Derek hovered by the wall, arms crossed, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Beside Grandpa was Rachel Harper, our attorney, a slim leather briefcase at her side. She nodded to the notary who was already unpacking papers at the coffee table. The atmosphere felt less like a family gathering and more like a courtroom. Grandpa didn't waste time. Robert, Elizabeth, Derek, we're here for clarity, not debate. He set the documents down with deliberate care. As of today, all financial support from me has ended. I've transferred a legal title of this house, the 2 rental properties, and a $100,000 savings account to Ethan. You have 30 days to vacate this home. My mother gasped. Dad, you can't. Rachel's voice cut her off. Calm but sharp. He can. These are fully executed trust documents. You'll find your names absent. My father stepped forward, his face red. This is excessive. Yes, we made mistakes, but we're still family. You can't just strip us of everything. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. You stripped Ethan first. You left him with nothing. Now you get to live with what you left. Mom's voice cracked. We were desperate. Derek was in danger. Loan sharks, people you don't understand. Stop. I finally burst out, my voice louder than I'd ever heard it. I was in danger too. Do you know what it feels like to collapse in the middle of a lecture hall because you haven't eaten in 48 hours? Do you know what it's like to hide holes in your shoes with duct tape because you can't afford new ones? You let me drown while you threw Derek a lifeboat made out of stolen money. Tears slid down her cheeks. We never meant for you to suffer, but you chose it, I said coldly. Every time you had a choice, you chose him over me. Derek stepped forward, voice shaking. Ethan, please. I'm in therapy. Trying without help, I'll fall apart. You're my brother. I met his eyes. Steady. Brothers don't let their brothers starve while they gamble away their futures. He swallowed hard, words failing. For the first time in my life, I saw him without the glow of favoritism, just a man unraveling under the weight of his own choices. Grandpa tapped the table. We're finished here, Rachel. Leave them copies. Ethan, let's go. Outside, the October air was cool and sharp. Grandpa placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. How do you feel? I let out a long breath, like I finally set down a weight. I didn't know I was carrying. Good, he said, because the real revenge isn't taking what they have left. It's building what they can never take from you. 6 months later, life transformed out with Grandpa's trust covering tuition, housing, and food. I quit both jobs. I threw myself into my studies. My GPA shot from a 2.8 to a 3.9 in one semester. I joined a robotics research team, something I'd never had time for before. I slept through the night. I ate meals that weren't just cheap carbs. My body filled out, strong and healthy. Meanwhile, the collapse of my family was swift. Dad filed for personal bankruptcy when creditors discovered his company was already insolvent. Mom sold her jewelry and cars to cover utilities. The sympathy she expected from extended family never came. Everyone knew the truth. Derek hit bottom. Without constant bailouts, he lost his apartment and moved into a friend's basement. He worked washing cars to pay for his own rehab. For the first time, his survival depended on himself. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., I sat in Dr. Martinez's office. We talked about what it meant to grow up as the expendable son, about how hunger teaches your body to never trust comfort, about how betrayal burns slower than anger. It seeps into your bones unless you learn to let it out. Do you regret anything? He asked one morning. Just one thing, I said, that I didn't find out sooner, because the truth didn't just free my bank account, it freed me. One evening my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Against my better judgment, I answered that it was my mother. Her voice trembled. Ethan, your father had a heart attack. The hospital bills, we can't cover them. Please, can you help? For a moment, old instincts, tug duty, guilt, the ache of wanting to be a good son. But then I remembered the nights I begged for help, the nights I slept hungry. Do you remember when I called you because I couldn't pay rent? And you told me to figure it out, I asked quietly. She sobbed. Please, we're your parents. No, I said firmly. You made your choices. Now you live with them. I hung up and blocked the number. 3 years later, I stood on stage in Boulder's Event Center, graduating magna cum laude in mechanical engineering. The crowd roared as my name was called. In the front row, Grandpa beamed, standing proudly even though his knees ached. Beside him sat Marcus, my loyal roommate, and Dr. Martinez, who had walked with me through every scar. My parents weren't there, Derek wasn't either, and for the first time, it didn't hurt, because I had learned something vital. You don't need the approval of those who betrayed you to validate your success. 5 years later today, I'm 26, working as an aerospace engineer in Seattle. My salary in 6 months is more than I made in 2 years of double shifts. Every dollar is mine, earned by effort and merit, not stolen promises. A letter arrived from Derek not long ago, handwritten, shaky. Ethan, I don't deserve forgiveness. I wasted opportunities you never had. I've been clean for 90 days, this time for myself, not for mom or dad. I'm sorry. I don't want money. I just wanted you to know I finally see what I did to you. I placed it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll respond, maybe not. Forgiveness comes when you're ready, not when someone begs for it. Looking back, I realize my family's betrayal forged me. 2 years of starvation taught me resilience. 5 years of lies taught me independence. Discovering the truth taught me the difference between love and manipulation. And now, as I chart my own path, I know this. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. The best revenge is simply living well.